Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Town of Delafield Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, July 23rd. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you please call the roll.
Supervisor Mahoney-Ogden.
Present.
Supervisor Miller.
Present.
Supervisor Wolfley.
Present.
And Chairman Kranek.
Present.
Thank you.
And Supervisor Michaels is excused. Next item, citizens' comments. Public comments from citizens regarding items on or not on the agenda. The board may not engage in discussion with the citizen making the comments. Individual presentations are limited to 3 minutes, and citizens shall follow the rules set forth in section 2.04, paren 1, paren D of the town code. Is there anybody who would like to make any public comments this evening? Okay. If you come to the podium, please, so the people on YouTube can hear us.
I'm Maria McKenna. I'm a resident of Delafield. I live on Pewaukee Lake on Oakton Road, and I understand that you're going to be discussing potential residential lighting ordinances, and I'm here in support of that. I support it for a number of reasons. Light pollution in general, direct or reflected light trespass, which is another big issue, which is light from a neighbor's property that falls onto yours. Also avoiding glare, which can adversely affect someone's ability to enjoy their property if there's lighting that is over and above what it needs to be, and also to protect wildlife habitats. We moved to Lake Country from Elm Grove to enjoy the nature and open spaces, moved to a less densely populated area because of that reason. So there weren't as many street lights, there weren't as many commercial buildings. We did not move to this area because, or move close to a Target parking lot because of the lighting, right? You move out here because you want to enjoy the space. We have a couple issues even where we live. We have some neighbors that have very large, bright mercury lights that shine directly in several of our neighbors' homes and reflect off the glare of the lake. We cannot leave any of the curtains open in any of the bedrooms to enjoy the night sky because the glare comes right into our homes. We're also a little bit concerned about the new Thomas Farm property because that's right behind our property, and just want to make sure that there are some ordinances in place that that's not lit up like a Walmart parking lot over there, again, to adversely affect our ability to enjoy the light, the night sky. And I think, there is certainly a reasonable balance between safety, which is the primary reason people have lighting at night, and the enjoyment of the night sky. So I think there are a lot of options, from motion sensor lights to particular lighting that is dark sky certified, which we've looked at replacing all of our lights with that. So I just wanted to say that I am certainly in support of the residential lighting ordinances.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming to speak this evening.
Coming. Thank you.
Seeing there are no other members of the public, I'm going to close the citizens' comment period. Next item is item 5, approval of the minutes. I look for a motion to approve the June 25th minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes?
A second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes.
I'm going to abstain because I just want to check some of the wording here. I know right afterwards I was a little concerned about the wording with Brian Lindgren being willing to look at a list of lights that we would give him. And again, maybe it'll be a non-issue if we do this. I need to abstain with that.
I did look through the,
Yeah, and I listened to it a few times too. It was,
yeah, and I was trying to get as verbatim as possible, especially with that section, because I know you had talked about it, and if you look through it, you'll find it's very close.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes 3-0-1 with 1 abstention. Next item, actions on vouchers and Submitted for payment, reports on budget sum accounts and actions to amend the 2024 budget. There are none, so I'd look for a motion for accounts payable and payroll, please.
Motion to approve payment of checks number 67740 through 67768 in the amount of $153,272.79, and checks number 67770 through 67785 in the amount of $48,163.16. Additionally, motion to approve payrolls dated July 5th, 2024 in the amount of $17,635.71, and payroll dated July 19th, 2024 in the amount of $17,209.78.
Second.
Motion is second to approve accounts payable and payroll. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda is communications for discussion and possible action. Lake Country Fire Board update.
Yeah, speaking with Supervisor Miller, she's going to give me an update that I'll forward along to you. She's still waiting on the minutes to be drafted on their last meeting so that she can get a little bit more information, and then once I have it, I'll forward it to the board.
Okay. And the only other communication is there is a Waukesha, or a Wisconsin Towns Association, Waukesha County unit meeting tomorrow evening at the town of Oconomowoc. Should be a good meeting. It starts at 6:30 with a lunch and then the program to start after. Meg Wortman from Waukesha County is going to be there to provide an update on the ever-changing election laws and rules as we head into election season here. Next item, item 8, unfinished business. There is none. Item 9, new business. Discuss and possible action on the authorization of Lake Country Fire and Rescue to enter into a purchase agreement with Pierce Manufacturing for a pumper truck to be delivered in 2028 at the cost of $1,189,089. I believe the chief's memo outlines this pretty well. Essentially, with the supply chain issues and the cost increases that are coming, the fire department is trying to be proactive in locking in a price, knowing that there's a 4-year lead time to get a new pumper, and trying to lock in that price. 6 of the 7 communities have already approved this item, and we would be the last municipality to approve this item this evening. And if anything were to happen to LCFR between now and 2028, it would be divested as per the terms of the agreement at the time.
Yeah, there were discussions, the 7 administrators from the communities met, and we thought it better to wait to make payment in 2028. I know there is a cost savings to pay it now, but with money in returns for interest, that's over $1 million, and that's $260,000 money that we get to keep. I think we're still getting a deal because in 2028 that truck may be $1,500,000 with how inflation is going. We just thought it pertinent to wait. Plus, if we're going to have prepayments on all major purchases, our capital budgets are going to just be all over the place. So we have to have a steady capital budget, pay when it's due, as opposed to, ambulances now are 4 years out from order. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that we need to maintain a steady budget and hold our monies that we have to get some interest revenue for the communities. So
Well,
that
the
was
town
why.
is unique also that we don't necessarily borrow for capital like our other partner municipalities do.
Correct. So that's why we came to a consensus that this was the best option.
Bagley, any input as far as from the fire board perspective? I mean, I'm assuming.
It was a pretty flowy conversation, and I did not hear any opposition from other partners in the community regarding this purchase, so.
Yeah, and similar to Dan's, my understanding is exactly, all we're doing is essentially guaranteeing the spot at the rate we can get it at now, for the
Yeah.
time that it was planned to be delivered, so.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and if we don't need it at the time, it's just going to go up in value, so.
And to be clear, most capital purchases don't go to the board, each boards, they usually run their own capital budgeting. This, we need to make the order now, so it's before the budget comes out, so that's why we need to get it approved.
Motion to approve the authorization of the LCFR to enter into purchase agreement with Pierce Manufacturing for pumper truck to be delivered in 2028 at a cost of $1,189,089.
A second.
Motion is second to approve the purchase of the pumper truck in 2028. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next item, discussion possible action on the approval of the amended employee handbook. Turn that over to Administrator Green.
So the last time we had our employee handbook revised was in 2021. Since then, we've joined WRS, and it still referenced an old benefit that is no longer available. So that's one of the updates that we were looking to make. One of the other ones is something that I had brought up 3 years ago, but it didn't move forward, and that is regarding maximum vacation time. We are currently limited to up to 4 weeks of vacation, no matter how long you've worked here. Every community that I've reviewed back 3 years ago when I was looking at this was at least 5 weeks, some even 6. So I'm advocating for going up to 5 weeks. Once an employee hits their, I believe, 15-year mark, then they'd gain 1 extra vacation day for every year of service to a maximum of 5 weeks at the 20-year mark. This is common. It varies from community to community as far as how many years of service to get to that 5 week mark. But I think that's a fair number. I think we would have 2 employees next year that would meet that requirement. They're at 4 weeks already.
Where's the wording of this? I'm just trying to find where I'm following.
So it's in the employee handbook. I didn't print the full employee handbook, but it's in my report.
It's,
In the
But-
agenda link, right?
Yeah, it's in the agenda link. I just had the whole employee handbook. I didn't print it in the packet. I can pull it up for you though, real quick.
is it safe to assume that this is kind of an industry standard?
Yeah, like I said, when I was looking at this 3 years ago, every community that I looked at had 5 weeks at the minimum for a max. Some had more. Some communities didn't have any. They just had what it was, PTO, where you just have a general amount of days off. I think that's becoming more popular as well. But
My gut feeling is that's excessive for just, I'm just looking at, in terms of, I'm looking at businesses, what businesses offered that, I know we're government, but that would fly at most boards of businesses, is just my gut feedback.
I don't know if you get 20 years maxes it out or 15.
20.
Yeah, I would give an employee with me for 20 years 5 weeks of vacation. I'm hiring, so if anybody's
I'm
looking.
saying, I'm trying to find the word. Are you saying, I thought you're saying you're asking for 6, that's what I'm trying to find.
No, I'm
Asking
saying
for
we're
5
at
weeks.
4 right now.
We're only at 4,
max.
so we're going to add an extra week at 20.
Yeah, so
It's-
at 15, they get 1 day every year until the 20 year, then they're maxed out at 5.
Which is in line with other municipalities, and it's in line with other businesses that I've worked at. I think it's employee retention and employee morale issue, and as we try to, find work-life balance, is important for people to take time off and recharge so that they're, ready to go. This is really just going to affect the highway folks right now.
Is this paid leave or unpaid leave?
It's vacation.
It's paid vacation.
leave.
Paid
Paid vacation.
I mean, I'm better with taking the extra week unpaid. I mean, it's not, you can't take it off. Again, I just look at running a business and.
That wasn't the only thing either, though, right? We were
No,
talking
that's
about-
the 4th. And then the last was Trying to save money through insurance, so providing an opt-out payment for people who do not take insurance. So essentially, it's kind of a motivator for folks who may otherwise take their wife's insurance or husbands or whoever's insurance. Thank you. That they might be swayed to not take insurance, and this is just because rising cost of insurance is going up like crazy. So, just in the first year of doing this, the town would save $49,000, almost $5,000 off the bat. Plus, if anybody else decided that they would decide to not take the town's insurance, then every other person that doesn't take insurance would be another almost $8,000
Sorry, you said it was a $49,000 savings?
4,900.
4,900.
And then
Okay.
and then almost
Yeah, yeah.
8,000 for any additional person that doesn't take it.
Underneath the
So-
insurance cost on that list of the numbers that you have on the correspondence here, is it HSA contribution?
So
said
a
HAS.
single, oh, it's
Is it
stupid
HSA?
autocorrect, yes. So insurance costs, that's just how much we pay to the insurance company, and then HSA contribution is
Okay.
the other 1,000, yeah.
Thank you.
So those are the three amendments that I'm looking to bring forward, and anybody has questions?
What was the first amendment?
Yeah, I was just saying,
Um,
review the three. I mean, I
Just
think
the
I can-
Wisconsin retirement. So we used to have a deferred comp contribution, and since we changed to WRS, we have to make that official in the employee handbook. So,
We're just updating the employee handbook to specify WRS instead of the differ.
correct.
And then the other two are really policy changes to allow up to 5 weeks of vacation for 20 years of service, and then providing an opt-out if you choose not to take the insurance.
Correct.
Well, I would motion to approve the suggested amended employee handbook items as presented.
A second?
Motion is second to approve the updated employee handbook items as presented. There's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
Abstention, I guess I'd like it modified. I'm fine with the vacation, I'm fine with the time off, I just think that extra week should be off unpaid. But they can still take it, but just unpaid.
Motion passes 3-0 with one abstention. Next item, discussion and possible action on the approval of an auditing firm based on the RFP submittals for the 2024 fiscal year audit. Dan did a really great job of laying this out in his memo. Is there anything else you'd like to add or give us a brief overview of what we?
Sure. So we did receive 5 proposals: Kerber Rose, Hawkins Ash, Johnson Block, Lucida, and Baker Tilly. Just a rundown. Kerber Rose actually is one of the auditors that reviewed Howard's audit papers in the past. I can't say all of their accountants, but a couple of their accountants are familiar with the town. And Howard gave them a very good recommendation. You can see some of the questions and answers that I had for them regarding just some other things that weren't necessarily part of their proposal. The cost is slightly higher than the others, but they also provided a line item cost for some of the other things that Howard's firm currently does, including 941, W-2s, WT-7s, 1099 preparation, and the quarterly 941s. Hawkins Ash was my number 2. That one is actually one that LCFR just approved. They were my number 2 based on the pricing and then the fact that they will do those other items. I also liked some of their answers to the questions that I had followed up on. Johnson Block never mentioned in their proposal any willingness to do the 941 W-2s or 1099s. I'm sure they're a great company. They audit the city of Delafield, and talking with Amy at the city, they haven't had any issues with Johnson Block. Lucida, I did talk to, actually Karen's works for a company that they use. They didn't give bad or good feedback. It was kind of a, yeah, they do the job kind of thing. So I did like the fact that they were out of Brookfield, but I didn't like the fact that they were talking about a completely separate negotiation and addendum to the contract for simple billable things such as, statement of tax preparation and help with that sort of thing. And then Baker Tilly, they're a big company. I was optimistic, but unfortunately they don't assist in anything. They only do the audit. And then looking at their price breakdown, they have a 5% administrative fee and then a $400 per journal entry additional fee for anything more than 5. Now we had, I think, 19 journal entries. So putting that
Would have escalated very quickly.
right, and then they would have easily become the more expensive one. As much as I know Wendy Unger was going to be the accountant for this, and she's great to work with, the cost and just the lack of other support, I had them as last. So after reviewing everything, I recommend Kerber Rose. They were the only firms that actually reached out to me directly to ask me questions about the town without me actually going to them. So I believe Johnson Block, Hawkins Ash, and Baker Tilly, I reached out to them to provide, and Lucida actually, all four. Kerber Rose actually came to us and asked questions and submitted their proposal. So
So it really came down to Kerber Rose being able to provide those extra services and giving us a bottom line price of what those would cost versus the other ones where it would be kind of billable hours and time and materials.
yeah, and like I said, I liked the conversation I had with them, and I liked the answers to the questions that we asked them both in their RFP and in the questions that we followed up with them on.
The, you've got the cost breakdown per year, and it's something like Kerber Rose, we'll just stick with your top 2 finalists here. So Kerber Rose goes out to 2026, and Hawkins Ash goes out to 2028. So, I mean, are these contracted, like, set prices that are locked in, or are these projections that,
They're locked in if you lock in for that time frame. Otherwise, they charge, most of them charge like a $5,000 administrative cost if you're only going to do a 1 year with them, because they don't want to put the time to get to know everything about your organization if they're only going to be your auditor for 1 year.
Sure. I guess the,
So we would lock in for 3 years, which is another reason I like them a little more than Hawkins Ash, because they have, I think, a 5-year.
yeah, they're looking to go out to 2028,
Right,
but at
which-
2028, you're 2580 for the year, as opposed to 2026, you're 27.4. I guess I mean, hey, you get what you pay for. I get it. I mean, is there a, I guess in my anticipation on how costs and prices are going, if you're locking in stuff sooner rather than later, seems like a positive. I'm not, I want you to be comfortable with who you use. I guess I just
Right.
a little more curious on like where that one over the other.
So you're saying, do I feel more comfortable in a 3 as opposed to a 5-year commitment?
And or if it's strictly this, like, if you think the value in the difference in services is worth the couple $1,000s difference of the contract plus the shortened time frame, like, great. I'm certainly all for your decision. I think you make good decisions on this stuff. I just am curious where the where it won over a 3-year over a 5-year contract period.
Yeah, Supervisor Wolfley, it basically came down to the level of service that we felt we were going to get provided by Kerber Rose. And at the end of the day, cost was a factor, but it wasn't the overriding factor. It was the support and the provision of those additional services that Howard's group currently provides that elevated Kerber Rose to the #1 position.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, and
It was your first choice, and the cost was higher. Did we try to negotiate with them to say, we'd like to go with you? Could you become a little bit more in line with your competitors?
I did not. Typically on a RFP, they send their bottom line price. There's not really much negotiating with that. But I will say that there may be substantial, the prices or the cost breakdown they gave for the extras was a lot less than what I anticipated. And you may see that Hawkins Ash, with the cost of hourly rates for those types of things, may end up making up that $3,000 difference too. I liked that up front. I knew exactly how much I was going to have to pay for those items, and it's actually less than what we were paying with Rotroff Jeanson.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of it had to do with just the conversations I had with them, just the feeling comfortable. You have to feel comfortable with your auditor because they're
100%.
looking at you.
And I would trust your
with a
judgment more
microscope.
than anything.
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah, I
so.
just, yep.
And I thought for 3,000, I initially budgeted for 40,000 for an audit because I had no idea what these things would come at. So when
Okay.
I saw 24, I thought, great. So
Fair enough.
And you
Yeah.
actually met the team who would be,
I talked to the individual who would be in charge. Yeah.
how
So
long
and
has that individual been with, I know it said they have local.
I don't. I'd have to look at. It's in the RFP. All of their.
Okay.
They did give. Every one of them gave their staff background and how long they've been a part of the team. So if you guys want to see the other RFPs, I can certainly send them. I just didn't want to create a 200-page long packet.
Trying to be
No, no, no.
environmentally
No,
friendly.
Nope, don't need that either.
Motion to, I mean, if we're, I'm,
Again, I think we trust what, the research you did, is how I'm
looking at it, Dan, so I would motion to approve the auditing firm based on your RFP submittals for the 2024 audit, actually, yeah, well, and on, actually,
and entering into a 3-year.
Yep.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the auditing firm awarding the contract to Kerber Rose. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, opposed, motion passes 4-0. We passed the fire truck, but I appreciate the fire chief coming here. If it's okay with the board, I would like to yield the floor to the chief if he has any comments or updates regarding LCFR that he'd like to provide to the board.
Okay.
And I'm doing this on the agenda based as that we had a communication for Lake Country Fire Board update. So I don't believe I'm swaying from the agenda. Would you agree?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, chief.
And thank you for supporting the fire truck. We sincerely appreciate it. Yeah, from the LCFR perspective, we're in budget season right now. So our budget went out last week, Wednesday, to our board in this room. Thank you for allowing us to host that meeting. It is available on our website for the whole public to see, lakecountryfire.com. If you go under our transparency tab, it's 2025 budget. I will be upfront with everyone. What I call the status quo operational budget for next year represents a 9.37% increase as it sat last week, Wednesday. And the reason for that increase is a number of factors, which are all clearly outlined in the budget. But the highlighted data is, one, we're making up for a $53,000 contribution that we made from the agency from their fund balance to the operations this year. So we need to make up for that. The second is a $46,000 increase in workers' comp premiums. That increase is twofold. One, we had a lost time workplace injury from a fire that occurred in 2022, and that finally closed in 2023. It closed in 2024. So now we're on the hook for paying for a couple of years on the mod factor on that. And the second is because of our increase in payroll. The mod factor is tied to your thousands of dollars in payroll. The other highlights in there are really, the lion's share of the increase, that 9.37% is taken up by contractual obligations that we owe our employees. With the hiring we've done, for the budget and the type budgets that we've had, we've budgeted them all at the low end of their pay scale, and we need to pay them. They take 10% jumps in between years 1 and 2, and 2 and 3, and then they stay there till year 5, and then they take another 10% jump, and then they stay there till year 7, where they take another 10% jump. So People are moving through there, so with all those obligations, it brought it to a 9.37% increase. In addition to that, we did put in there to hire 4 individuals next year, to continue on some sort of staffing trajectory, to continue to protect our communities. At current pace, we have 16 part-time individuals that need to work 2 shifts a day, so there are anywhere from 30 to 32 part-time shifts per month that are available, and those are lacking at the moment. And we just had a commission meeting, which I apologize for being late for, but one of our part-time individuals is gonna get hired full-time, so that's gonna take that number and drive it even further down. And that's really the lion's share of where we're at, and the ask of where we're at. I should also add, the 4th individual for next year is covering one of our full-time members that is being deployed in the U.S. Army. So they're leaving us in September for at least a year-long deployment. Our experience with the deployments in the past is that they sometimes are a year, sometimes they're 18 months. So we really don't have a say in other than standing behind our employee as they go and serve this great country overseas and serve their mission. So that does create a significant disadvantage for the agency, though, in and of the fact of right now we run at minimums every single day, so to be short one person on that means that anytime somebody's on vacation, or God forbid we had a workplace injury or somebody's out on an extended leave, that results in overtime to fill those positions, which is costly. So that is where we're at. I can pause and see if anyone has any real questions for me on that.
You want to talk about the importance of coming to the August 7th meeting?
Yes, absolutely. So August 7th will be a meeting like we've never really done before. It is an interactive experience at our Station 45 in Neshota. Reason for that meeting is really to show our elected officials, our board, our commission, our citizens, what it's like when we're running on 2 people, when we have 2 people on a call to handle an emergency for an extremely sick person. And you're going to see a paralleling call where there's 2 individuals that handle and mitigate that call, and alongside of it you're going to see 4 individuals. So it's the same patient, obviously it's the same scenario in 2 rooms next to each other, and you're going to be able to see how much faster somebody gets treated with 4 individuals and that they get off to the hospital and to their definitive care where they're needed, versus a call that's handled with 2 individuals. And with 2 individuals, it poses safety risks for lifting and carrying and doing all the things that we have to do with it. So we really hope that it illustrates kind of in real time what's going on these calls when we need it. The second scenario that you'll see is a fire scenario. So you'll be able to see again a fire scenario that's handled with 2 individuals, which 2 individuals does not meet the state requirement for 2 in, 2 out, which is a state law in SPS 330. So when we get to a fire with 2 individuals, if it's a house fire, we have to stand at the door and wait for a next engine company to get there. If we get at a fire with 3 individuals, we have to stand at the door and wait for the next engine company or ambulance or anyone else to get there, because we can't go into that fire unless there's 2 people outside to rescue those that are inside. So we hope that it's really an illustration of that this isn't a wish list, this is a necessity. I can tell you we've had, in the past 3 weeks, we've had some interesting calls that have taxed the system to the point of breaking, one of which revolved around the Tesla fire that we had on the freeway a couple of Wednesdays ago. 20 minutes after we had that Tesla fire on the freeway, which was a learning experience for everyone in Waukesha County, by the way. That's the first, to our knowledge, the first EV active fire that we've had in the county. And even Milwaukee County hasn't had but 1 or 2 of them. So we've talked with some of our colleagues back and forth on how to mitigate those types of things. But I can tell you that fire resulted in an 1.5 hour long duration of an incident with the freeway closed. 15,000 gallons of water. It was a tanker shuttle back and forth to keep water coming to the fire engines and things like that. So, but 20 minutes after that call came in for a person trapped with a vehicle on fire and burned, we had a vehicle fire come in the city of Delafield on Blue Spruce Lane. We were out of resources that day because we were running in 2 stations in a browned out situation. Running in that situation forced us to rely on mutual aid the whole system was busy, which happens very, very frequently. And with the whole system busy, we were lucky enough to get an engine company out of Heartland. It took a little bit longer for them to get there. But in the process of that, had the wind been any more than a mile an hour, we would have lost the house that was 10 feet away from this car that was fully involved when we got there. So there's instances like that occurring. There's 2 instances in the last week where we've sent the brand-new ladder truck to a call with 1 individual in it because we don't have anyone else to put in it. And I have a lot of heartburn on that because that is a very expensive vehicle, and we're sending it down the road, red lights and siren, and that is a liability. I don't have to tell the insurance guy how that works, but, you know, these are real things that happen every single day. And our staff has done a tremendous job of their adage and the things that they say is, we're making it work, chief. But we've got to continue on a trajectory that somewhat resembles the plan that was in place. Fully aware that we will probably ultimately end up revisiting that plan with the communities in relatively short order, not for 25, but for 26, which is something we're certainly open to welcoming the discussion on. But we've got to continue on it. So
So I got that August 7th. Where is it?
Neshota.
Shoda?
Yep. The next budget meeting is on August 14th. That's at the city of Delafield. And then the next meeting after that, I believe, is the 21st. And just give me a TBD location on it. I thought we had posted on one calendar Neshota. But
One
then-
says city, one says Neshota.
Yeah, so we need to get some clarification out to all of y'all.
And then the big meeting at Kettle Moraine is
September 6th. Let me just confirm for you.
that Thursday is.
September 5th, I'm sorry, September 5th. And that's at 6:30 PM in the same Kettle Moraine High School library.
Yeah, so the bottom line is they're making it work, but they can't control when the calls come in, and when the calls come in within 20, 35 minutes of each other, it's really taxing the system very, very thin and to the point of breaking where, thankfully we've avoided, anything major, but it's at its breaking point, so we need to figure out how we can continue to hire folks.
Yeah, and in the budget package, I believe it's 40% of the time, when we're out on one call, 40% of the time we're out on 2. So at 8 people with 2 stations, or that system it's at its breaking point. So, and that happens 40% of the time. So, yep. But we appreciate all of the time and effort that everyone puts into everything and continuing on the trajectory. So,
Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
yeah,
update.
no problem. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Shannon.
Next item, discussion and possible action on a residential lighting ordinance. You want to kind of update us on your memo?
Sure. So Tim and I have been talking about this a little bit, and I think the best thing that we can do is get some type of a specific direction, and maybe it's not at tonight's meeting. I know Steve wanted to chime in his two cents on the subject. So maybe tonight's just kind of a discussion on some specific points that the board wants to see if we move forward with a lighting ordinance. And I put in my memo just a couple of discussion points we've already had. The first was the purpose or the intent of the ordinance. And I put this in because every ordinance that's created has a purpose or intent to the ordinance. And so I just want everyone to kind of think about what their purpose or intent is. And when we draft an ordinance, it has to be I would say, a united purpose or an agreed upon purpose. And I think I have an example of that in another lighting ordinance that I use, Town of Oconomowoc. And then in enforcement, you've heard me say this over and over again, just to be mindful of the more restrictions you put, the harder it becomes to enforce. And I don't mean the burden of myself necessarily on enforcement, because there's really only so much that I can do as far as writing letters and that sort of thing, but just to be mindful of when you see these residential ordinances that are in place and the examples I've used, and just to be clear, I use Shaniqua, Town of Oconomowoc, and Oconomowoc Lake. They have the staff or the ability to enforce these at a better, more available staffing to enforce these types of things.
They have a full-time police department with a bunch of sworn officers to just
And they're sworn officers that work for that
municipality.
municipality. So they're at the bidding of those elected officials. So just something to keep in mind when it comes to lighting. As far as the options for the ordinance, I kind of put the basics, and Terry, she sent an email to everyone that kind of touches on some of these issues through some of the dark sky initiative, I guess I'd call it, that also uses some of these examples, shielding or cutoff lighting. That would be, putting some type of a cover on a light fixture so that it directs light downward, so it's still lighting an area, but it's not lighting the sky necessarily. And then light trespass, limiting the glare of light to not extend beyond a certain point. I think light trespass is more of a definition and shielding the light is basically how you avoid light trespass. Foot candles, that's just basically a measurement of lumens per square feet of surface. So when we're talking about measuring light at a certain property line or just beyond the property line, when we talk about foot candles, we're essentially talking about lumens. And then Shaniqua used a great example of a Kelvin temperature scale to talk about the whiteness or maybe the brightness, I guess, of a light and the different ranges that they have, and I just included that to show kind of what Shaniqua did. Other areas that you guys can consider at the board level is the hours of use. I know we talked about potentially cutting off lights at a certain time. Some communities in the ordinances I've referenced have a time where they want lights off. Some just suggest it. And then specific lake regulations. If you want to go down that route, you can specify glare and light trespass requirements on shoreland areas. And like I had stated, I did include those different lighting ordinances for your review. And then at the bottom of the memo, it just shows some of the other communities that have commercial lighting standards, but that don't have residential lighting standards. So that's just kind of the overview of my report. And it's really a discussion at the board.
Town of Oconomowoc, and I see Village of Oconomowoc. I have Shaniqua's, but am I missing it? Is it tucked in here somewhere? I know I have a copy of it, but does everybody have a copy of it?
Oconomowoc Lake?
No, the Shaniqua one? Remember, I know you and I.
Shaniqua was the
Is
first
it-
one.
It's the one with the
The
scale on it.
I saw you quoted from it, but is that the,
That's the one with the seal on it.
I see, town,
It should be Oconomowoc, or Shaniqua, and then it goes to Village of Oconomowoc Lake,
And then Town of
and then Town of
Oconomowoc.
Oconomowoc.
yeah, I see Village of Oconomowoc. Where am I seeing Shaniqua's? I mean, I can just pull my own copy and just try and find it in here.
Page 20 of 28.
20 of 28, okay.
Well, that's, I think, a copy from.
That's part of it that you have right there, I believe. That's their lighting scale.
Yeah, where you got the color temperature, it's that right there with the,
That's, so theirs starts
On the back side of that page.
on the back side of that page.
where the color thing is. That's Shaniqua's.
Yeah, on the back side where the color thing is.
Here, so this is where it starts, right here. Yeah. So
Or it
page
just says-
20 of 28.
5.24.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just right to Shaniqua, it just doesn't say it on top. Okay, I have a copy, but it just looks different. Okay.
So, when I brought this forward, I know we had a discussion a couple months ago about this, but obviously there's an appetite for, a common sense, lighting ordinance, and, ultimately it comes down to, the restricting people from the peaceful enjoyment of their property with people's light trespasses and lights. And then just the educational factor of, weighing, public safety and lights and trying to find the right balance of, feeling safe and having that security blanket of having a light. But I don't believe that means that you got to have 6 wall sconces and your light pole on the street, lit up, from dusk to dawn, 365 days a year, to accomplish that. I think that at the end of the day, that there's a happy medium. I believe that, 97% of the residents and properties in the town do a good job with their lights, but it's come to my attention over the years that there's a handful of property owners that aren't necessarily being respectful to their neighborhoods and their neighbors with their decision on their lighting. So that's why this is in front of us this evening. I don't intend to get really deep into this with Supervisor Michaels not in attendance this evening. I believe that this discussion should really happen with all 5 members of the board here. But I'm just based on the other discussion that we had previously, it's trying to find that balance between, this is government overreach, who are you to tell me, what lights I'm going to use on my property, versus, dark sky. So there's that spectrum that we got to try to craft a common sense ordinance to try to, deal with some of these lighting issues that are examples in this town. So, I think, looking at some of these ordinances that exist currently is a good first step, but I'd like to hear kind of what the top 2 or 3 things from the other board members are this evening and try to encapsulate that and then circle back when Supervisor Michaels is able to join us and get his 2 cents and then make a decision based on all that input.
In my opinion, the 2 most important aspects of this would be the light pollution and the control the light trespassing through the neighborhoods. That's really what matters to me mostly. But you're right, it's a challenging discussion to find the right balance. And I appreciate Dan for sharing how limiting it could be to enforce.
Yeah, and I don't mean to, whatever the board decides, they decide, and we'll try to make it work as best we can. But I think what I've heard from, at least from residents and from folks on the board, is the new development, obviously, that's coming forward. And so I know Terry and I had a discussion about doing something in phases where maybe you start off with new construction, downlit lighting, making sure that, that you're cutting off those lumens for new construction, and just to, I guess, fix the immediate problem, if you call it a problem, the immediate threat, and then down the road look to see how that goes and if you want to expand it beyond that. But and that would fit the enforceability part too, because it's a lot easier to let developers know from the beginning and then
I kind of like that idea, actually, yeah.
catch it at the building plan phase. So
Because that kind of helps alleviate because ultimately the end concern is enforcement.
Yeah.
We don't have the staff or the manpower or the resources to go enforce every property in the town, and I believe that if we try to do something retroactively, it would be very difficult and potentially costly to the town taxpayers if, somebody was to challenge it. So.
And I guess that's where my I have plenty of lights that I don't enjoy, but I have a real problem also with an ordinance that's unenforceable. And if we have, if we put rules out there and are not followed or enforced, now you're I mean, you're creating yourself a whole nother problem, right? And so, you know, if one person complains or one person, like, how do you then go back and say, okay, well, you know, your lights are this bright? Well, show me, right? Like, who's got the tools, who's measuring the stuff? How does it happen that these things are actually enforced? And I don't have much of an interest in passing a ordinance with no enforceability for the sake of passing an ordinance, and I think that is a critical first step. Now, I think if we want to talk about new construction lighting requirements, again, I'm fine. Like, let's see what options are available in that scenario. But what happens if they change their garage light? Right, I mean, that's, you know, I mean, I just changed the lights that are on the outside of my garage doors. You know, you can start with something that's in a construction requirement, but now when you come back to that enforceability of, like, are we going to have emails that are, hey, you know, neighbor at 2525 just changed their garage light, and I don't think that's a legal garage light now. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm
Yeah, no, we gotta.
big concern there.
We gotta always kind of think about, you know, kind of worst-case scenario and try to think about things that, you know, could happen or may happen in the future, because we don't want to create some, you know, unforeseen problem or issue that, by, you know, by an overreaching ordinance. We got to try to think about something that isn't going to come back and, you know, cause problems, or where people are going to complain and say they're not able to meet an ordinance, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you know, you'd mentioned a handful of people. I mean, I feel like the encouragement of education and posting and getting people to understand what it is that the town would like to see, because you'd like to think that people would rather comply by being asked to than being forced to, right? Specifically, there's a handful of people, like, who's gonna knock on their door? Hey, guys, like, can we shut the lights off at 11? Like, that'd be great. Would really rather not pass an ordinance that then requires that we hire a code enforcer that we buy a bunch of equipment for, that then is available at midnight to go measure the lumens that are coming off of your light post. You know, I mean, that's the piece that, if you take it to its end of trying to enforce this, that I have a real hard time figuring out how we can do that without spending a whole bunch of extra money.
Well, and I think that's why we look at just solving the problem that's right in front of us, and then seeing how it goes from there. Yeah, I agree with you, especially when you have residential subdivisions where the town required light poles, and then to say, well, you can't have those anymore.
Right.
And they're hardwired, so you can't just simply turn them off. But if we can solve at least, we put this section separate from Chapter 17, knowing that if we needed to make
Which section are you
amendments,
talking about?
the lighting ordinance in general.
No, I mean, when you say you're
I'm
putting,
just going like this.
Oh,
in this
the-
motion. I'm just doing something with my hand. I'm just speaking.
I thought you're referencing a specific portion of what you
No,
were-
I just mean the
Gotcha, gotcha.
ordinance, the entire ordinance was put in as a separate code section so that it was not tied into our zoning code, meaning we don't have to go to a public hearing, then have it approved by the county and have a 3-month process. We can approve it here at the town board, which makes it very liquid, and we can make changes that we see fit, and that moves with how the neighborhoods and how, you know, the board shifts and how the public opinion shifts, I guess, based on like education, as Joe mentioned. So
Well, I mean, as you know, I'm pretty passionate about this, and I think it's exciting. You can go on the Dark Sky International. I know we're not going to become one, but I do find it inspirational. I feel like you read that and you think it's what the neighbor who just came in here and spoke about, you know, why they moved out to the Lake Country. So, yes, I think, for sure, I think we should look at something for any new construction, whether it's a subdivision or whether it's just somebody who's building a house on a lot. I think part of it is because it's not that home builders' problem, because they go to the store and, you know, everybody's trying to sell lights. So I think, and I mentioned this in a previous email, not an email I sent to you most recently, but a previous one, that there's a list. It's not like, this isn't difficult to buy the proper downlighting shielded lights. I mean, you can go to Home Depot. So I think we're not asking new neighbors to, when they're building their home, to go out of their way to buy something extraordinary. This is common, these are common fixtures. So I think doing that as a new construction is something for sure we should do. I think it's very easy to find lists of lights that are acceptable. Specifically, again, the keywords are, again, to eliminate any kind of light trespass. You know, and again, I think I know we're not getting into the details, so I didn't think we're really doing that. I started off getting into details, and then I talked to Tim, and he said right now we're just trying to get ideas. So I've got plenty of thoughts on it, and suggestions and lists, and I would encourage you guys that's why I sent those websites, just to read about it, because if anything, it's educational. I did print this out because I did speak to this community that's a lake community. They're small, but it reminded me, they're in the Midwest, and they went dark sky, and I told them, I said, we're not looking to go dark sky, just give us, you know, what can we do? Give me some ideas. They printed this newsletter that they sent me separately. Again, this will be part of so if we can adopt something for all new things, I don't think we need to like wait. I think we need to, hey, this is what we did, and now we want to share this great information. And in our next newsletter to our townspeople, we can say, this is what we did and why we did. This is just a suggestion. But what I do think it's fascinating is this whole glare thing, because I think we've heard they talk about glare and looking out and seeing glare. And glare really, it's like, glare is glare. I don't think that's subjective. I mean, you could say, but this is fascinating. And what the guy told me on the phone, who really was the one that got this, they got this whole community to change their street lights and to keep it a dark sky. And, you know, he said, our police officers might be able to tell us this one too. They said, really, it's safer, I don't know if you guys have any opinion on this, to not have glare, because, I mean, I think this is fascinating to me, this little picture, if you see it, just how I can show you this little picture. I mean, basically glare blinds you and you can't really see who's hiding in there because you're blinded. I just know personally, when I drive out of a certain place, I have to put my head down because the glare is so much you can't even see. So, I think very much so we should educate our whole community on glare, and it's an easy way, without having to change your whole light fixture. Maybe you have to shield it though, so that you don't have glare. So maybe it's not changing out the whole light fixture. Maybe it's changing the bulb so that you don't have so much Kelvin, and that is measurable. They have this whole community, I mean, there's guidelines. I think, you know, Shaniqua's has some very specific, they all have some really specific things that we could pull off of. I would love to help use those as examples for our existing residents. Maybe we don't call it an ordinance for now. I was trying to think about enforceability. If we had something in writing that, you know, I know we have our nuisance ordinance, and it seems like some of the complaints that we get could kind of almost fall under nuisance, that if somebody truly has to shut their blind at night to go to sleep, which is, you know, then I guess isn't that kind of considered a nuisance? I'm just thinking how we can make it enforceable if we have a suggestion for our lighting, and if this is affecting the well-being of a townsperson, that would be considered a nuisance. I don't think you're going to be out driving around policing lights, because I think it'll just kind of come up naturally. If somebody really has an issue, they'll have read, oh gosh, the town actually has recommended standards. And if somebody is really keeping me awake at night because, then I can go to the town and say, I'm just thinking, is nuisance a way to make it enforceable?
That's ultimately why we didn't take up a residential lighting ordinance when we took up the commercial lighting ordinance, because at the time, we felt that the way to address those residential issues or neighbor issues was through the nuisance code and through going to court and through the nuisance code.
So we still, okay, I thought that we really didn't have anything to rely on because we didn't have anything in writing, so.
Well,
but
we
you're
don't
saying-
have, the town doesn't have an ordinance or a code to enforce it, but, you know, the private individuals, if they have a nuisance or feel that there's a nuisance, I mean, the standard is a lot higher to try to prove a nuisance than say, hey, you don't meet this ordinance. But if they believe it's a nuisance, they can go through the nuisance procedure and process.
Basically, it's a civil matter, and so it's a civil issue that they would take on their own accord to a civil court,
And
basically.
I think that's what would be nice to have our town, again, I look at how can we be a leader with this? Again, we've got some great suggestions around this, but, so if somebody wanted to complain, they couldn't come to the town and say, we have recommended lighting practices. I'm seeing something here that isn't recommended. The town wouldn't do anything, is what you're saying. Because I don't really think that
Correct.
we're going to be asking the police to go out and measure lights. I don't really think that's going to happen. I think it will self-police itself, because most people don't care. Most people don't
But
really
if it doesn't,
notice.
Well, but if you're asking somebody to change their lighting fixture on an existing home, they're not gonna, some might say, great, sure, I'll do it, but I bet a lot of people won't say that. And we've already had neighbor disputes over, and I know I talked to you a little bit about this, sign ordinances, where you would think that, well, you want the community to look nice, so you limit the size of the sign. We have neighbors pitted against each other, looking for all these signs to just wait for the chance for them to put their big sign back up. And so I think some residents would acquiesce or say, I'll shut my light off then, or something like that. But you might pit neighbors against each other because you
Yeah, I
have to
mean,
say
I-
that there was a complaint.
Yeah,
And so-
unfortunately, just given the current climate of the way things are in this country, there are individuals and neighbors who feel that it's their property and they have the right to, if they want to light it up like Techeetah or light it up like a Walmart parking lot, that's their prerogative with very little disregard of how it affects their neighbor and their neighbor's ability to peacefully enjoy their property at night. And they would say, go buy blinds or go buy, curtains and shades.
Where I feel like we should do something. We should protect the neighbors who
Well,
have
and-
to shut their blinds at night.
Well, and
because they-
ultimately, that's why I made the decision to bring forth a discussion to talk about a residential lighting ordinance to, start hammering on, new construction so that anything new built in the town, they have their lights directed down, cut off, they're not, creating glare. I think, ultimately, that's the desire, is we don't want to have, cut off lighting and lighting directed down to the sky, so it's not trespassing off people's property lines.
I think you're
And the
right, that's a
color.
reasonable approach.
The Kelvin, I think,
Yeah.
is key too, so that it's more of the yellow light versus the white light.
So,
I had, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Terry, I had, in the last discussion on this, I had asked what your, 4 or 5 bullet points, what, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, right? We didn't get an email until 4 o'clock. I didn't read any of the
Oh,
websites.
that was
but-
just suggestions, because
Yeah.
when I found out last week, we really weren't doing anything big, because Steve wasn't here. this was
Sure.
more ongoing stuff to
No,
kind of
that's
talk about.
fine. I mean, I'm happy to read the websites,
Yeah.
but I mean, I guess, it just, again, I mean, I don't know if you had any time to think about it or.
Oh, I've had
but,
plenty
like,
of
I
time to
guess
think about it,
Of
yeah.
the if you can bullet point 4 or 5, this is what I'm looking for, that
That's
helps
exactly
me
what I
a lot
told-
more of
yeah.
and thank you as well, Magley, Supervisor. Magley, I've got the light pollution and light trespass written down, so.
and I did talk to Dan Green over the phone last week, say, look, I think the only way we can, efficiently tackle this, because that's a big chunk of discussions, right? We're starting kind of from scratch, not really from scratch, but residential-wise. I told Administrator Green that I would send my bullet points of what I'd like to see part of an ordinance. So I think this is probably the most reasonable way to kind of share what I'd like to see versus other things.
Yeah, because those, I mean, that's perfect, because those, then now I can better research what exactly specifically trespass definition and specifically the pollution definition is and where it can fall into an ordinance that you can.
Well, the top two,
do
I mean,
some.
I've got probably 10, but I think the top two really that I feel is using cutoff fixtures, which again, the beauty of that is it doesn't allow for trespass. It just, the light goes down, and is the Kelvin, so that it's yellow light, not white. Those are kind of the two big. I think we would have a humongous savings, a humongous change in our light pollution, even if we just did those two things in all of our town. Again, then you could, that's the really, I think, kind of almost like the fundamental. And so I don't even have to give you 5, I'll just give you those 2 for starters. And then after that, we talk about time of day. Again, dusk to dawn.
Not dusk to dawn, right?
Well, yeah, I'm not a fan of dusk to dawn at all, but I was talking to a resident about this, and he's like, yeah, same thing. He had already had his fixtures in there. He's like, yep, this is what we did. So he said, but mine are low light. So I actually went and looked at them, because I was, and you're right, they were yellow, low, even though they're dusk to dawn, but they were low. So they weren't, so I think it's having our specific things, if you do have dusk to dawn, say this, I think suggestions would be you don't have dusk to dawns, but if you do, then you need to have kelvins that are between, like 2,200 ideal, between 2,000 and 3,000 kelvins, and which means a softer yellow or light, not a white light.
So I have a
And that's
question.
one, I'm just trying to help answer his question, that's that. So then my other thing would be, consider turning your lights off at 11 o'clock at night and putting them on motion sensors, and if you have exceptions to that, I think that's where you can, I think Shaniqua said you can apply for one. That's where I think it gets a little gray, and I think you might tick people off that don't want to, that don't want to do that, but I think we say if you do keep your lights on, then at least you need to maybe change the bulb and make it a lower impact bulb, and it does have to have a shade on it so that you're not creating light trespass and you're just going down.
Do you know of any online resource which would describe the impact of a light fixture in a specific environment? So if I'm looking
Well,
at.
the dark sky folks
Yeah,
do really good.
right.
I mean, if you.
You could spend hours on that website, and that's why I wanted to give it to you, just so
Yeah.
once we leave this meeting, again, I knew you weren't gonna read it now, but the little clip, the 3-minute clip that Dan was reading that you can have people listen to, and I invite you, if you guys wanna listen to it right now, these folks got interviewed, the lake community in the Midwest, was interviewed on WGN, because they live outside Chicago, and they made their whole community dark sky. And I said, I'm just looking for inspiration, what can you do? And he's the one that printed this little newsletter, which I thought could be helpful, and they sent it to me, and they sent me the clip that I put, they said, I have it online, or you have it on their computer, that just
No, I
is a
mean,
little bit about,
At the end of the day, if you want to really become educated in lighting and lights, the Dark Sky website or Dark Sky folks is a really good resource to understand this.
Because you need to focus on the visual, what you have in front of you.
Yeah.
That's how I think you can truly understand how this.
But even this
Whole topic
this
is about-
3-minute little, the thing that they showed is actually very interesting. I'd love for our police officers to see it too, just because it shows how, or even just this picture, how the glare is actually worse.
Yeah.
You can't see what's going on because you can't see anything because you're so blinded.
Right.
And I think that's what I just feel, I'd like to tell everybody in our town, and how do we handle, and that's what I'd like to go on the dark sky thing about, are there just shades then, or bulbs that you can change to make the glare not so bad? I can give you more, keep going and getting more. I was just kind of hoping everybody might just, after this meeting, spend a little time reading there and getting a little inspired by some of the options. So those were the two biggies, though, I think that we could start with. Anybody want to listen to what they say?
No, I think we can listen to that and see that stuff after this meeting. You sent us the links. But
There's so much.
Yeah, no, I
I
mean-
was starting to cut and paste things, and then I said, okay, I would encourage you just like really click around, because there were so many links within links. Like you just asked a question, Supervisor Miller, about the specifics, illumination, if that's where you just kind of click on all these
Well, it's
different links
overwhelming.
and-
This is
yeah.
why I'm like, okay, so
No.
what exactly do we need to
But the
give
good news is there's
Administrator Green
lists.
for like guidelines and directions, right? So he can.
Well, I think we make a motion to
recommendations.
table this, and we bring it back when all 5 of us are able to be at the table here, and then we can kind of understand where Supervisor Michaels stands on the issue and see if his bullet points align with the rest of our bullet points. And then we can decide if we want to direct staff to try to pick through some of these ordinances and find something that's workable and bring it
Well,
back.
I guess
or
my hesitation on that is I'm not
you're not sold on it 100% yet.
not even that sold on it 100%, right? I mean, like it was audibly brought to my attention, we're the town of Delafield, and we don't, I mean, like, I would, if we're gonna grab a section of one, whatever, but I'm not interested in just lifting a,
No, we got to make it the town. We got a town of
right.
Delphi's.
right. Yeah, and
Not
so.
understanding. Say that again. I'm not following.
No,
you,
I'm
Joe.
not,
Say-
I'm not interested, if we're gonna do anything, right, like, I'm not interested in like, oh, I like Shaniqua's, boom, like, well, Shaniqua has like 700 people or something. So that's not a piece that's going to translate exactly to the town of Delafield. So if whatever is going to happen, what's that?
How would you approach it then?
Well,
Well, I think that's why, Tim and Administrator Green gave us examples from the different municipalities to kind of see what works or what may work in this community.
Sure.
Knowing that,
And I think that's, the only thing that I'm interested in doing is something that can be equally applied and reasonably enforceable, right?
Right.
I think when you're talking about a new building code or adjustment, like, that's fine. Now you've got to pass building code to get your occupancy, and, right, like, okay, we can look at certain things that are going to impact a new construction build. I just am not interested in the things that are kind of, some of the stuff that's, I would say,
Well, that's-
in the
should we
brief
do this
review,
now?
blanket, no, I think it's important we wait for Supervisor Michaels, but I'm giving you some of the background and where my no-goes are, right, is I'm not interested in something that is in here because it makes us feel better that can't be enforced.
And
Which makes sense.
but knowing that you gave us these things, I mean, I know we're not passing anything, but just since
We're
they're-
discussing.
do we want to look at any of these and just, is there something, Supervisor Wolfe, that you would say, I absolutely do not like item C of Shaniqua's, or I absolutely do not like, I mean, just, is that what we're trying to just, or to get some rough, because that's what Tim said, is he just needed some suggestions, some direction.
Yeah.
what were your bullet points? I mean, my bullet points were, the cutoff lighting and directing the light down, and to encourage people to turn the lights off after 11 o'clock, or if they're going to be dusk to dawn.
Yeah, I mean-
To lower their intensity.
My bullet points don't apply to current residents. So I don't have any bullet points that would apply to the current, I don't want to ask people to make a dollar purchase via ordinance that we can't enforce. I think it's important for an appropriate education and say, hey, we'd love it if you did this. This is what we're asking. This is what we're looking for our new construction of the new facilities. We'd love for you to apply this to your home as well. But until there is an enforcement mechanism, I'm not looking to go backwards to people and current residents, and something that creates
Enforceable issue.
unenforceable issue. I was going to say
But glare, do you think glare?
pissing match between
Yeah.
neighbors that are like, well, I don't like that house, shut it off, and the one around the corner is unaffected by it, right? So, but I'm sorry, what's that?
Thinking about the glare thing, because glare is just, is I think, pretty obvious. It's not the same, you're right, you could argue that one house has too many too many uplights, and this one doesn't, but glare is glare. And some of that actually doesn't mean they have to expend something different, they might just need to change the bulb.
Oh, 100%. I
that's why I
got
feel
a
like it
lamp
was-
post that goes right in my bedroom window, and if I come out of the bathroom at 2 a.m. and right in the eye, I mean, it's bright. It's not great. It's whatever. But, I mean, it's something where it's never frustrated me enough that I'd go knock on his door and say, hey, can we shut this thing off at 11?
I think the
Like now I just
betterment-
know to duck around the window where it comes in, but, so that's where, again, thoroughly open to a discussion on new construction, and having good and appropriate etiquette, I guess we call it, right? The good fixtures, good bulbs, nice placements, all that stuff. But I'm not, as you said, I'm just not there where I'm gonna put something onto 9,000 residents that we can't enforce.
So for our residents who are looking for that, what do we say to them? Sorry, we can't help you? I mean, I'm just looking for your feedback.
I mean-
Here's a resident today that came and said, oh, I heard you're doing this, thank you, thank you for doing this. So what do you say then?
Right, I mean, I know it sounds old-fashioned and corny, but I sure would love to have more people, like, knock on your door and ask. Right? I mean, if it's close enough that it's intruding in their window, they're probably neighbors, they've probably had a conversation, right? And you can say, hey, I'd really appreciate it if this light was shut off at 11, right? And then maybe they're gonna say, well, I would shut it off at 11, but my kid gets home at 1, right? They work at the restaurant, wherever, they get home at 1, I can shut off at 1, right? Whatever there's motion light, I don't know. But if we're talking about a handful of problems to be solved, right, like, the tool shouldn't be a sledgehammer.
But I
Right,
think it's
it's-
not just a handful. I think the beauty of it is that, think of it, this could actually become our whole light fixtures for the town of Delafield. I mean, Dan and I were talking about this, of how you could really create the whole, the whole sky. could
But does it
be-
need to
if
be
everybody-
regulated?
Pardon me?
But does it need to be regulated into effect?
But if you have to let the people know that this is
Right,
what we're
so
looking for.
I'm 100% happy with appropriate education, getting the word out, saying, hey, this is what we're looking to do. We'd like to do it without making you do it, right? I just, that's,
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if, we could wave a magic wand and, make the entire town in compliance and make it, everybody was directing their lights down. But I think on this issue, there isn't an easy button to hit that,
Right.
I think it's a good first step to, start tackling, new construction and new homes and start setting that precedent. And then as people start changing their lights and making updates and pulling building permits, then, we can require them to update their lighting at that time. And then in the meantime, run a parallel process of just educating the public and educating people about the benefits and the, and safety of, directing your light down and reducing the light trespass, that it's actually safer and that you don't have to be, lit up and provide glare to, feel safe.
yeah, like I said, new construction stuff, happy to go down that path. Not thoroughly interested in exploring the prior without an enforceability, something to be able to be enforced.
So, Dan, does that give you, I mean, I know we're just chatting because Steve's not here, so you've got mixed feedback even from here. I mean, I think we all agree, well, it seems like we're all agreeing that we're good with new construction. Are we all in agreement of the 4 of us here?
Well, wait, are you trying to, are we looking to?
We're not making any motion.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
No,
yeah.
but I mean, just because
No,
we needed
I
feedback.
think I got enough information, and
Yeah,
if
I
I
think it's-
didn't, I'll
it's
go back
mixed.
and watch it. So,
Yeah, I'm open to hear and see what new construction stuff is available.
That'll be our
100%,
focus.
so.
That's the
Right?
focus, although,
Yep.
and I'm personally, the 4 of us still interested in how, beyond that, let's just, we're gonna be on a roll and specific with education and maybe glare. Just tackle one thing, maybe not everything, but just glare,
I-
for existing. But we can use our, new construction
So for-
guidelines
Yeah.
as an opportunity.
So for the sake of having everyone on the same page, ideally, when would you like me to share my,
I would
My
say
bullet points.
everybody can,
Meeting.
everybody can in the next week,
next week? Okay.
in the,
Within a week,
in the
yeah.
next week, if they have discussion points or certain things. I have right now, Terry, your biggest things were cutoff lighting, the Kelvins, lights off at 11. Magley, you talked more about like the foot candles,
And glare.
trespass and glare.
Oh, yeah, Terry, yeah, glare for Terry was, but as long as you got glare under somebody.
The glare's under there.
You mentioned glare, did you not, Ed, or not?
Yeah, glare and
glare.
cut off lighting and directing your lights down and, just.
And I think it's okay to mention motion sensors is the answer too for some of this, for the security things. I mean, that's another opportunity, that's an okay thing.
Yeah, I think, and especially for new construction, those are easier to just install when you install your home.
Okay.
I don't know.
I look for a
All right.
motion to table this.
Motion to table discussion on residential lighting ordinance.
Second?
Motion second to table, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It's tabled 4-0. Next item, announcements and planning items. There is a plan commission meeting on Tuesday, August 6th at 6:30. Do we know what's on the agenda, or, because we need a
Sure.
quorum,
Yeah, so
right?
we need a quorum because we have a rezone and we have just a rezone, that's why we need a quorum. But then we also plan on holding a town board meeting specifically for that rezone right away. This is for Life Striders, so they're trying to lower their overall impervious surface so that they can build a building, and they want to try to get that building built as soon as possible, which means they have to go through the rigmarole of the county approvals, which takes 2 months. So if we can get it through the town immediately, then they can start that process going forward. So,
Because, yeah, so the plan is to have a town board meeting immediately following the plan commission meeting on August 6th. And then there's a partisan primary election on what would have been our normal meeting date, Tuesday, August 13th. So we're not going to meet on the 13th. We're not going to meet again until the 27th of August. And then in the meantime, also just want to reiterate that August 7th LCFR meeting at the Village of Neshota, where they're going to go through those exercises to really help illuminate the differences of having 2 people versus being fully staffed. I think it would be important for all elected officials that are able to make it, and members of the public and members of the media to attend that meeting, to really understand ultimately that what the LCFR is asking for isn't this crazy wish list, that it's really a need that needs to be fulfilled. And with that, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned 4-0.